So out front with us tonight, Democratic Congresswoman from California, Karen Bass. She sits on the House Judiciary Committee. Congresswoman, great to see you. Great to have you on.
Thank you.
Bottom line, what do you say to your Republican colleague, Congressman Rooney, and his call for a purge at the FBI and DOJ?
Well, I actually think it's very frightening, and I have to tell you that Representative Rooney and I are on the Foreign Affairs Committee, and when I get back to Congress in a couple of weeks, I want to sit down and talk to him about the McCarthy era, because I'm not sure if he remembers the Cold War. He's old enough to have, but, you know, the type of purges he's talking about harkens back to the Cold War, when there was a purge by McCarthy to find communists that were hidden in the federal government. It sows distrust in our institutions, and I think it's irresponsible, and maybe he needs a history lesson. Maybe that's what would be helpful in this time period.
But to the congressman's point, there are members of Robert Mueller's team who have contributed to Hillary Clinton or other Democrats. By our count, 9 out of 15 lawyers in the special counsel's office. There are agents who temporarily worked for the investigation, who exchanged messages, texts that were critical of President Trump. Do you think it's fair to question the objectivity of this investigation?
Well, I mean, I don't think it's unfair to question the objectivity, but I will say that when there was inappropriate contact, text messages, etc., Mueller took action. He took action right away. I think when you become an FBI agent, you don't use you lose your right for freedom of speech or to participate in terms of giving contributions. I think my Republican colleagues, what they are doing is laying the foundation. They are clearly very afraid that indictments are going to come, and so they're laying the foundation for there to be mistrust in the process, and I think that's very sad. I think we should allow the process to move forward.
So by attacking the FBI and individuals such as Deputy Director, FBI Director Andrew McCabe, do you believe that Trump is committing obstruction of justice or witness intimidation?
Well, I'm not a lawyer. I can't speak to that, but what I can say is that it certainly seems as though he is very frightened. And one thing that we know, we've all had an experience with the president now for a year, and his behavior is very predictable. So when things get close or when he is criticized, he reacts and he tries to divert the attention. And I think that's exactly what he's doing now. They are sowing essentially concern and disbelief and making people doubt the validity of the investigation. But Mueller has a very long reputation, and I think he's fulfilling that reputation in this investigation.
But you say that they're trying to sow sort of distrust in the investigation. But President Trump, if you noticed, he has largely avoided going after Special Counsel Robert Mueller. What do you make of that?
Well, I mean, I think what he's doing is all about that. And I think the thing that has been different, and again, I sit on judiciary, so I've watched this whole process, and in the past, there hasn't been a number of Republicans that have stood up and really defended him. But this is their way of defending him now. When we had the head of the FBI, when we had the assistant attorney general come before our committee, the entire Republican side of the committee was asking questions along the same lines. Their talking points were the same. They're clearly doing this in conjunction and collaboration with the White House, and they are in the White House as well as in the House laying the foundation when indictments come to say that they're not valid because the investigation wasn't valid.
Do you have But you say they're clearly
afraid,
in coordination with the White House. What makes you say that? I mean, is there evidence to support that beyond the tweets?
Well, no, it's not the tweets. It's sitting and listening to hours and hours of questioning by my colleagues, where their talking points are completely in sync with the White House. And it is sowing the mistrust, it is sowing doubt, and it is raising questions about the investigation. Instead of allowing the investigation to move forward on its own and let the chips fall where they may, they are attempting to influence, if not the outcome of the investigation, they're attempting to influence the public opinion about the validity of the investigation.
All right, let me just quickly ask you, President Trump is preparing to turn his attention to infrastructure after his big victory on tax reform legislation, legislation that not one single Democrat supported in the House or Senate. But Trump seems to think Democrats will work with him on infrastructure. He recently tweeted in part, quote, "At some point and for the good of the country, I predict we will start working with the Democrats in a bipartisan fashion. Infrastructure would be a perfect place to start." Do you agree with him?
Well, I think infrastructure is a very critical issue, and if you remember, he wanted to do that in the beginning of his presidency, and he declared Infrastructure Month, and I think that lasted for about 2 days. So I don't think that that is a genuine interest. We just finished blowing a huge hole in the deficit, something that the Republicans religiously say that they're against. And so a few days ago, they talked about entitlement reform as a way of filling that hole. So if they plan to do infrastructure in a way that continues to blow a hole in the deficit, I don't know that there would be an opportunity for much unity. The devil is always in the details. Democrats absolutely want to do infrastructure, but want to do infrastructure in the right way.
All right, Congresswoman, thank you so much for coming on the show during a holiday week. We really, really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.